it so often, and surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes. He's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury? Well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit the faults were all on my side, but I must say I find Brother John's coldness to me peculiarly painful. I had expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time I have come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us?
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, my child.
We must not be premature in our judgment. I feel very happy.
Algy, you young scoundrel! You must get out of this place as soon as possible. I don't allow any Bunburying here.
I have put Mr. Earnest's things in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that is all right.
What?
Mr. Earnest's luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman ordered the dog cart at once. Mr. Earnest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I haven't been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the slightest degree.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? Perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who's actually staying for a whole week with you in your house as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You are certainly not staying with me for a whole week as a guest or anything else. You have got to leave by the 4:05 train.
Oh, I certainly won't leave you so long as you're in mourning. Be most unfriendly. If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I should think it most unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long. I never saw anyone take so long to dress, and with such little result.
Well, at any rate, that's better than being always overdressed as you are.
Well, if I'm occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you have got to catch the 4:05 train, and I hope you will have a pleasant journey back to town. This Bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it's been a great success. I am in love with Cecily, and that is everything. Yeah, but I must see her again before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh? Is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It is a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
You really keep a diary? Why, give anything to look at it. May I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. Pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you have loved me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Oh, Cecily.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell it to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
I don't care about Uncle Jack. I don't care about anybody in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes. It will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how do we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, the man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was very foolish of me, Ernest, but I fell in love with you.
Oh, darling. And when was our engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you at this very spot. The next day I bought this little ring in your name. And this is the little bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I give you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes. You've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for your leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them.
I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I had broken off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was, on the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all. Cecily, I am very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
Oh, Cecily, you're a perfect angel.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, darling. With a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again.
I don't think I could break it off, now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Earnest. There is something in that name which seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
But, my dear child, do you mean that you could not love me if I was called by some other name?
What name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
I don't like the name of Algernon.
But my own dear, sweet, loving little darling, I really don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's not at all a bad name. In fact, it's rather an aristocratic name. Half the chaps who get in the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name was Algy, could you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I fear that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly versed in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh, yes. Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He's never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I'll see him at once for our most important christening. I mean, most important business.
Oh.
I shan't be away more than half an hour.
Considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th, and that I met you today for the first time, I think it rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal in my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on most important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went down in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes,
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the many good elderly women associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women interested in philanthropic work. I think it's so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other such a comparatively short time. Won't you sit down?
Thank you. I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You've never heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I am glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for a man. And certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So, do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolen. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
No, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also.
Oh, no. I have no mother. Nor, in fact, any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes. I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh? It is strange he never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How very secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I am very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But I am bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Pray do. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history provides us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Earnest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say they've not been on good terms for a long time now.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that I come to think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Oh, Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship such as ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure it's not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolen, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can say, dear Gwendolen, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promises, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have got into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On such an occasion, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall we lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills, quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden, this, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I understand the aristocracy are suffering very much from it just at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I have been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake cake is rarely seen in the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I have known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
Save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest, my own Ernest.
Gwendolen, darling.
A moment. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack. Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
But what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolen.
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolen. I mean to Gwendolen.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there must be some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is at present embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh, is your name Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh, is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is John.
Oh.
It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor, wounded Cecily.
My sweet, wronged Gwendolen.
You will call me sister, will you not?
Oh.
There is just one question I should like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be allowed to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolen, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time in my life I have ever been reduced to such a painful position. And I am really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother in my life, and I have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to follow us there.
No. Men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bumbling, I suppose.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is, too. The most wonderful Bunbury I ever had in my life.
Well, you have no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
But that is absurd. One has a right to Bunbury wherever one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist? Good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunburying. What you are serious about, I haven't got the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algy, and a very good thing, too.
Your brother is a little off-colour, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London quite as frequently as your wicked custom was. Not a bad thing, either.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I must say that your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defence at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen, that is all. I love her.
But I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
Oh, there is certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
Well, I don't think there's much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
Well, that is no business of yours.
If it was my business, I certainly wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How you can sit there calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble, I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would get on my cuffs. Oh, I should always eat muffins quite calmly. It's the only way to eat them.
I say it's perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I'm in really great trouble, as anybody who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I'm eating muffins because I'm unhappy. Also, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that is no reason why you should eat them all in that greedy way.
I wish you'd have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens, I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
You said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
Well, that may be, but the muffins are the same.
Algy, I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner. It's absurd. I never go without my dinner. No one ever does, except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I've just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 6:15 under the name of Earnest.
Oh, my dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened myself at 5:30, and I naturally will take the name of Earnest. Gwendolen would wish it. We can't both be christened Earnest. It's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence at all that I have ever been christened by anybody. I should think it extremely probable I never was, and so does Dr. Chasuble. It is entirely different in your case. You have been christened already.
Yes, but I've not been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That's the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. If you're not quite sure about ever having been christened, I must say I think it rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. It might make you very unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected with you was very nearly carried off in Paris this week by a severe chill.
Yes, but you said yourself that a severe chill was not hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
Oh, that is nonsense. You're always talking nonsense.
Jack, we're at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 muffins left, and I told you I'm particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Then why on earth do you allow tea cake to be served up for your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality.
Algernon, I have already asked you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet. There's still 1 muffin left.
Oh.
Did not follow us at once into the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery.
Approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It is the only thing to do now.
silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends upon your reply.
Gwendolen, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
So that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that does not affect the wonderful beauty of the answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order to have the opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest possible doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not the moment for German scepticism. Their explanations appear to me to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think we ought to forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True. I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. But you should tell them. The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
Oh, an admirable idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing.
I am.
To please me, you're ready to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
How absurd to talk about the equality of the sexes. Where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens.
Gwendolen, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here, sit down. Sit down. Immediately. Apprise, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin. I followed her at once by luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. But, of course, you will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolen, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards to Algernon. Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
May I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Oh, no, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury's somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury's dead.
When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? Oh, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, I mean he was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, that is what I mean, so Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he made up his mind at the last to a definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have finally got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I am engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seem to me to be considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think that some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I ask merely for information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminal.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, SW, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire, North Britain.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, Markby, and Markby.
Markby. And Markby? A firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I'm told that one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
Oh, how extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I have also in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, confirmation, vaccination, and the measles, both the English and the German variety.
Ah, a life crowded with incident, I see. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl, I am not myself in favor of premature experiences. Gwendolen, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask you if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds, that is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000, and in the funds. Miss Cardew seems to me a most attractive young lady, now that I look at her. Few girls of the present day have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with age. We live, I regret to say, in a time of surfaces. Come over here, dear. Pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvelous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lancing, and after 3 months her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn round, sweet child. No, the side view is what I want. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points of our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin, a little higher, dear. Style largely depends upon the way the chin is worn. They are worn very high just now. Algernon, there are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the dearest, sweetest, prettiest girl in the whole world, and I don't care tuppence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully about society, Algernon. Only people who cannot get into it do that. Sweet child, of course you know that Algernon has nothing except his debts to depend upon. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. But I never dreamed for 1 moment of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I do not approve of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extreme, I may almost say, an ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, and he looks everything. What more can one desire?
It pains me very much to have to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, about your nephew. But the fact is that I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon, impossible. He is an Oxonian.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London, on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house by means of a false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name, he drank, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of my Perrier Jouet Brut 89, wine I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he was perfectly well aware from the first that I have no brother, that I have never had a brother, and that I don't intend to have a brother, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
Well, that is very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come over here, sweet child. How old are you, dear?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
You are quite right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should ever be entirely accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be very long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I don't think that your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
Pray excuse me for interrupting you again, Lady Bracknell, but it is only fair to tell you that according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age till she is 35.
Well, that does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have of their own free choice remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton is an instance in point to my own knowledge. She has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which is many years ago now. I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be even still more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is now. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algy, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes. I felt it instinctively. But I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others. And waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
Well, then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worth, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait till she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to me to show a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg you to reconsider your decision.
But, my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage to Gwendolen, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be perfectly aware, sir, that what you propose is out of the question.
Oh, then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny that I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, may choose for himself. Come, dear. We have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christenings, sir? Is Is not that somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At that age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he learned that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand, then, that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I do not think that as things are now, it will be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savour of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views that I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I am on my way to join her.
Pray, allow me to detain you a moment. This matter may prove to be one of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I have been waiting for you there for an hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby?
Oh,
28 years ago, Prism. You left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104 Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was recovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality, but the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had with me also a somewhat old but capacious handbag, in which I intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction I had written in my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria. The Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolen, wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered the thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
The noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if you were having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It has stopped now.
I wish that he would come to some conclusion.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It appears to be mine. Yes, here is the injury it received through the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. And here is the stain on the lining caused through the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred in Leamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten that in extravagant mood I had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I'm delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it for all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes, Mother!
Oh, Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried? Oh. Well, I do not deny that is a serious blow. But after all, who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Oh, Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive. Would you kindly inform me who I am?
I am afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? Then I have a brother after all. I knew I had a brother. I always said I had a brother. Cecily, how could you have ever doubted that I had a brother? Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolen, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you young scoundrel. You will have to treat me with more respect in the future. You've never behaved to me like a brother in all your life.
Not until today, I admit, old boy. I did my best, however, though I was out of practice.
My own! But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you are someone else?
Good heavens, I'd quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose?
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolen.
Well, the matter had better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta, a moment. At the time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I was christened, that is settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally called after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the General's Christian name was, but I have no doubt that he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years, and that was the result of the Indian climate and marriage and indigestion and other things of that kind.
Algy, can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
Oh, my dear boy, we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army lists of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta.
The General was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I have no doubt that his name would appear in any military directory.
Well, the army lists of the last 40 years are here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. M. Generals. Malum, Maxbaum, Magley. What ghastly names they have. Markby, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief. Lieutenant 1840, Captain, Lieutenant, Colonel, Colonel, General 1869. Christian names. Ernest, John. I always told you, Gwendolen, that my name was Ernest, didn't I? Well, it is Ernest after all. I mean, it naturally is Ernest.
Yes, I remember now that the General was called Earnest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
My own Ernest. I felt from the first you could have no other name.
Gwendolen, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out suddenly that all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you are sure to change.
My own one. Letitia.
Frederick! At last.
Cecily. At last. Gwendolen. At last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.